Thank you. All right, so I'm going to share the screen and we're going to get started with this video and then we'll roll into hearing more from Sophie.
Marks Eastern Illinois Food Bank's 40th anniversary of alleviating hunger. We were incorporated in 1983 and over the past 4 decades have grown into a dynamic organization, working with 160 partner agencies to serve over 1 million people a year throughout 18 counties in East Central Illinois. We are distributing as much food in a day today as we did in our entire first year. All of this was made possible because of the members of our community who were dedicated to alleviating hunger 40 years ago.
Well, I had gotten a phone call from a friend to tell me there was a meeting to start food banks. And we were told pretty emphatically that we couldn't do one because of the fact that you had to have a city of 300,000 as a base. And so we went back and didn't listen to them and did it anyway. The biggest thing that happened was about 2 years in, a man from Southland Food Distributors called me and said, we have our salvage here. We don't know what to do with it. They said to call you. So we accepted the salvage from them, which meant basically semi-damaged product that was very usable. And it brought in a lot of food to us. Some of us went to California to a big food bank conference in 1984. And there was a table run by the Oklahoma City Food Bank. And they had a Food for Families food drive with the Junior League. And we just instantly knew, whoa, this had to be it. So we came back, connected with them. They said, remember, only 3 years. That's all we ever do a project. Well, 13 years later, we moved on from them. But it was incredibly successful, initially in raising food, but mostly in raising money. And it was really critical to the advance of the food bank.
Food for Families was one of the early projects of the Junior League. When we talked about Food for Families initially, we had to talk about the food bank and say the food we're collecting in all these huge boxes in supermarkets and in schools was going to help feed the hungry in the community through the Eastern Illinois Food Bank. And I think it really brought a lot of attention and knowledge to the community about what the food bank does.
Get your mocha.
It hasn't always been easy, but Eastern Illinois Food Bank will always strive to meet challenges head on. In the early days of the pandemic, there was so much uncertainty in our community. Our neighbors needed us. We modified our food mobile program overnight, and in March of 2020, we're serving 1,500 people at each drive-through distribution. We never closed, and our staff worked tirelessly to make sure that we were able to keep up with the increased need. As we emerged from the pandemic, we took on the challenge of expanding and improving our facility. Thanks to the generous donors who supported our capital campaign. In 2022, we purchased and renovated the building to our north, adding 18,000 square feet and 2 loading docks to our facility. Despite all the challenges, we continue to meet the need of our neighbors seeking emergency food assistance. I truly believe that Eastern Illinois Food Bank can do anything because of what I've seen over the last 3 years. We know we couldn't have achieved all this without the remarkable support of our community. I am continually inspired by our volunteers. They give us the most precious thing they have, their time, to ensure that neighbors have access to nutritious food. Our partner agencies, such as food pantries, soup kitchens, and other feeding programs, are on the front lines every day, putting food directly into the hands of those that need it most. We are nothing without these extraordinary organizations. We are incredibly grateful that we have such a philanthropic community. Everything we do is possible only because of the generosity of our donors.
I know this. There's how many agencies have told us that they would not exist if we did not make the food available at the cost that we were able to do it. They just wouldn't be able to do it. So it's a network. It was just a very few people who started the food bank, and they started in the face of people telling them they couldn't do it. And it's just been one thing after the other in terms of developing till we're now sitting in this giant warehouse, you know, with just so much food in it, so many people being fed. So it's really, really great.
My hope for the future of the food bank is that one day our services will no longer be needed. But until that happens, we will continue to do what we've done for 40 years. Ensure that every family, every child, senior, veteran, and individual in our community has reliable access to the nutritious food that they need to live a happy and healthy life.
All right. Wow. So my tears came to my eyes. That's very moving, and what a beautiful package of what's been happening for so many years. So to put a finer point on how the food bank works and who the food bank is serving and just what's changed in the last couple of years, we have Sophie Becker with us. So thanks for sharing your screen, Sophie, and getting going with the slides. And then while she's getting set up, I'm going to put the link for the impact report from the food bank in the chat, so each of you has access to that.
Thanks so much for having me, Tracy, and everyone for having me. I know I saw a lot of you at the Food Summit, and I'm really excited to share some things that have been going on since then. The elevated need that we're seeing, the way that we're trying to meet that impact. So yeah, Tracy did already introduce me, but yes, I am the communication and engagement manager at the food bank. I run the team that handles a lot of things: event coordination, fundraising efforts, volunteering, donation entry, lots of fun stuff. I've been at the food bank for about 4 years. I started right before the pandemic, which was an interesting time to start. When I was in, I think I said this at the Food Summit, forgive the repeat, but when I was in college, I worked at Gap, and my first day was Black Friday, and this kind of felt like that. Kind of trial by fire. So it was a very humbling but rewarding time to start food banking, and I'm very grateful to be doing the work that I'm doing, especially right now. So if you're not familiar with the kind of the mission of the food bank, our mission is simple. We are alleviating hunger in Eastern Illinois. As you saw, we have been around since 1983, and our footprint right now is 18 counties. As you can see, it's nearly a quarter of the state. It's actually a pretty big area that we do serve. We're based here in Urbana, but we have a pretty big service area. The number you see here of more than 100,000 people, I like to tell people that is with a little grain of salt, because the data we have is through Feeding America's Map the Meal Gap data. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you, in recent years, data like that has fluctuated a lot. The need that we've seen and the factors that impact that need, those ebb and flow year to year. So this number is actually about, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years old. And I am very confident that the number is actually higher right now. But the data we do have right now says that more than 100,000 people in Eastern Illinois are facing food insecurity. How we define food insecurity is pretty simple. It's just anyone who may not know where they're going to get their next meal. Those are the people that we are serving. We are part of the Feeding Illinois family, which is under the Feeding America umbrella. Feeding America is a network of roughly 200 food banks across the country who do work together to feed people facing hunger. And some advantages to being a part of that network include a lot of things. It includes a lot of collaboration, sharing of resources. And one thing that's one of the more visible differences that may resonate with people is if you go to Casey's or Meijer or Sam's Club, sometimes you'll see a roundup at the register, and we are almost always a part of that. So any donations you're making at the register for those Feeding America campaigns, they do route those funds to the food bank serving that region. So if you have rounded up at the register, then we appreciate it because it has supported your local food bank. This is the part, if I were doing this in person, that I would ask you to raise your hand if you've come to the food bank, but you would look a little silly doing that, so you don't have to. But I will say, Whether or not you've come to the food bank in the past, I really encourage you to come now, because if it's been a while since you've been here, we look very, very different. And if you've never been, then we would love to show you around. We are very passionate about offering tours here. We love a good tour. Sometimes we'll even do them on golf carts and treat it kind of like a Universal Studios tour. So you won't have to twist our arm to get a fun tour from us. But we love showing off our facility, and we also love just showing people the process of a food bank. It's easier to see in person. I know before I worked here that I had a misconception that the food banks serve the public directly. And with the exception of one program, that's not true. How the food bank works is that we are a warehouse and the primary food source for a network of partner agencies. That's any food feeding program that could be a school market, a backpack program, a church pantry, a community center pantry. We have a network of those throughout the 18 counties, and we're providing food to them to provide to the community. So I think that is a common misconception that I always love to share a little more information about. We do like to say, if you've seen one food bank, you've seen one food bank. So every food bank really is different. Every pantry partner agency is different. So we really welcome you to come take a look and see how things work in person. You can see here kind of the flow of how things work. Again, if you were at the Food Summit, I did touch on this there as well, but this kind of shows, it's a good visual of the process. We receive food and fund donations from the community. I will say that the food donations we receive that are often from distributors, grocery stores, manufacturers, that amount has fluctuated as well in recent years. If you've been to a grocery store in the last couple of years, I'm sure you saw times where the shelves were a little empty, and that does impact us as well. So there have been times where stores have had a lot less to donate to us than they did pre-pandemic. And there are people who have worked here for years who tell me that they never thought they'd see the day that we are buying produce, but that's where we are. There are especially things like produce and those more nutritious, fresh foods. We are having to use funds to supplement our inventory and get those items. And that's why we do tell people that the fund donations really do go the furthest with us, even more so than a food donation. As you can see at the top, $1 will get 3 meals through the food bank. I don't have to tell you that's not the same at the grocery store. You're not going to get 3 meals for $1 at the grocery store. And also it is more nutritious food. $1 at the grocery store might get you a few packs of ramen, but we are able to provide more things like produce, bakery items, protein, things like that, canned goods. So the funds really do go a long way in making sure that we are remaining able to meet that elevated need in our community. Volunteers are a huge part of what we do. The most common volunteer activity is repacking food. Most of the food that we receive is in bulk. We may have bags of potatoes or pallets of canned goods, and our volunteers will come in and repack that into individual portions to go out on our food mobile and to our partner agencies. Sometimes the food mobile is the most common distribution method for what they're repacking right now. But it's making, a bag of different kinds of canned goods and nuts that might go together, or, those potatoes, apples, those bulk produce items, those are getting bagged into portions for families. So they are really packing the food that goes straight into the hands of our neighbors, and we couldn't do what we do without them. There are lots of skills-based opportunities as well. We've had volunteers help us paint things. There's a wide range of things you can do to help us out at the warehouse. So I really welcome you to reach out if you're interested in any of those opportunities. We do have open hours right now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 9 to 3. You can stop in and volunteer for 15 minutes or 3 hours or however long you're available. We welcome you to come by. We started doing that to be more flexible and make sure people in the community wanting to support us had a way to do that on their own schedule. Our volunteer hours are actually up about 540% right now over last year. The biggest reason for that is our new volunteer center, and I have a couple pictures of that later. But I got to say, it is a great place to come volunteer. So welcome you to come help out. For distribution, the most common way that the food will get to our agencies is through our fleet. We have a great team of drivers who are here usually before dawn, hitting the road and getting that product out to our agencies. However, there are some local agencies and a few that will travel a little as well, who will make shopping appointments to come visit our shopping area, pick up their orders, maybe see some of the things we've gotten. I will say things like the NALC Stamp Out Hunger Drive in May, when you get those little yellow bags from your mail carrier, or food drives, anytime we're getting in kind of a variety of donations as opposed to a bulk donation, a lot of those will end up in our shopping area. What's cool about that is our agencies are great at knowing their community. And so if they're seeing these unique items that aren't in bulk, maybe there's something they haven't seen before, or it's just in a smaller quantity, they're really great at knowing, so-and-so has a dog, I'm gonna grab this pet food, or, just this person has a child whose birthday is coming up, I'll get this cake. So that's a cool thing we see in our shopping areas, just some of those more unique experiences. Our partner agencies, that number does fluctuate a bit. We always have time to time, a couple new ones being added, maybe one will leave our network, but it hovers around 170 agencies that we have, and that is throughout 18 counties. Our food mobile is what I mentioned as being the exception to us feeding the community directly. This is when we are out in the community and directly giving out that food. Our food mobile program, as it was for a long time, started around 2008. And what that looked like was a box truck taking a certain amount of food to a stationary site and having a team of volunteers pass that out. It was a stationary food mobile, which is, of course, an oxymoron. And a few of those are still in operation because they're well-oiled machines. They are great teams who are doing great work and partnering with us to get this food out there. A couple of examples are Normal West Community High School in Normal and Mark Denman Elementary School in Danville. Those have been going on a long time, and they do still operate as singular sites. However, what's different this year is we received funding from the state of Illinois through a Reach and Resiliency grant to purchase the trailer you see in this photo, which is much bigger than it looks. It is a beast, and Rick Ridings in Monticello was very generous to work with us and get us a great truck to haul it. We've been very fortunate to get the community support to get this program off the ground. So this trailer, as you can see, it has a window that looks kind of like a food truck, opens up on the side. There are a couple of doors, there's a ramp in the back. There's lots of amenities and ways for us to use it in different distribution methods. It's key for us to reach our rural and underserved communities because, of course, transportation is one of the biggest obstacles in getting food, whether that's just getting food from a grocery store or getting food assistance. A lot of people who do live in food deserts or areas where maybe the closest grocery store or pantry is not close by, they're having to worry about not only paying for the gas, but also the cost it is to maintain a vehicle to be able to reach that assistance. So we knew that we had to find a way to meet our neighbors where they were at. And this food mobile was the solution. As you can see, the food mobile is sometimes able to be sponsored. You see in that first picture that one was sponsored by Bayer. They've supported us in Piatt and DeWitt counties. And so they will get some recognition around that. And their employees are also welcome to come volunteer, which is awesome to get for them to see that impact and help us hand out food in person. The schedule for the food mobile is that we're on the road almost every day, and each month we're visiting the same county on the same day. For example, Piatt County, we visit the third Wednesday of every month. So that same day each month, they know at that same time we will be starting in Atwood, then going to Cerro Gordo, then going through Bement, and then up to Mansfield. We have a route where we're stopping throughout the county in mostly smaller towns, and we're staying for roughly 30 minutes and handing out food in that community and then traveling on to the next one. Something that has been a challenge here is that, of course, it's great to find a visible location, maybe a park that's in the center of the town. That way it's visible and we're attracting attention for people who need our services, and it's accessible to people. However, I don't have to tell you that stigma is still a huge issue when it comes to receiving assistance, and especially food assistance. So a challenge we're having is there are a fair amount of our neighbors in these small towns where everyone knows everyone who are kind of facing a little bit of discomfort around getting those services in a very visible location. And we've had some people follow us to different towns just because they don't want to be potentially seen by a neighbor or coworker or someone they know in their own town. I will say that something that's helped a little bit is you see in this photo with that window open, we originally thought we could try distributing food kind of like a walkthrough model. They'd enter one door, shop in the trailer, and exit out the other side. It's turned out to actually be better to do a drive-through model. So our team is working within the food mobile to package up the food and do kind of the operational stuff, and then serve people on the side of the trailer in a drive-through model. And I relate that to the stigma because people have made comments that they are more comfortable staying in their car. Of course, cars can be recognizable, but it just is a little extra added comfort to them to not have to get out of their car in a small town. As of October, we were serving in all of our 18 counties. So we began in just a couple of counties at first, and now I'm happy to say that we are serving all 18 counties in our service area. And we are looking to expand, looking to potentially go more than once a month to certain areas. That's all still up in the air, but it's absolutely a priority to us to continue to increase the impact of this program. This is another resource I touched on at the Food Summit, but we have had a couple of updates. This is our food finder map. If you visit eifoodbank.org, at the Find Help tab at the top in the navigation, the Find Food option should be the first one, and you will see this map, which basically works like Google Maps for food assistance. We worked with Vivery Foundation to establish this, and what's cool too is the other Feeding Illinois food banks did as well. And the reason that's great is that if you're on a border county and maybe you're in a county that is technically served by Central Illinois Food Bank, but you live close to a county that we serve through Eastern Illinois Food Bank, because all the Feeding Illinois food banks work together on this, you will get results from both so that you can find the assistance that's most convenient for you. So what you will see is once you put in your address or town, or you use location tracking services, it will bring up the pantries near you. But the cool addition is the partnership services team here at the food bank worked very hard to add our food mobile stops. So in addition to seeing the pantries, those brick and mortar locations, you now will also see where we are stopping near you with that food mobile. Also towards the right, you'll see a black button that says download in English. I like to point this out because sometimes it's great to be able to pull that information and give it to someone who maybe doesn't have a smartphone or internet access. It can definitely be handy to provide that physical list sometimes. However, I do like to say that unfortunately with something like this that has so many moving parts, and because the pantries operate independently, sometimes when you print it off, it's out of date almost the second you print it off. So please feel free to use that feature. However, I do encourage everyone to continue checking back to the website itself, because any updates that are made will be reflected there, and paper resources are more likely to be inaccurate as time goes on. As we mentioned in the video, we did expand in the past year. Before COVID, we had already outgrown our space. We began in the basement of the old Sears building in downtown Champaign in 1983, before moving to a location on Griggs Street in Urbana. It's actually the building where 25 O'Clock Brewing is now in Urbana. We were there from the mid-'80s to 2002. And then in 2002, we moved to our current facility. However, we had outgrown that, and shortly before the pandemic, launched a capital campaign with the intention of building another building between our facility and the frontage road. And then the pandemic hit. So all the costs and labor and all the logistics that went into that started to kind of add up and make us a little worried about how we were going to get that done. So an amazing twist of fate is that the warehouse directly to the north of us, on the other side of where we wanted to build, was actually the exact square footage we were wanting to build. So we purchased that warehouse and annexed the two, and that got us 2 more bays for our trucks. It got us our volunteer center, and of course, more storage for food, which is key. So as you can see on the bottom there, that is our volunteer center with lots more room for food storage. And now we have a better flow of things. Instead of just having 2 bays for all receiving and all the incoming trucks, as well as our staff with the outgoing trucks. Now we have 2 bays where we can do our receiving, and then 2 bays where our staff are leaving. So there's a nice flow of things coming in and out of the warehouse. We have seen a huge increase in need this last year. The USDA actually released a report it was a couple months ago, I believe, and they confirmed what we have already been seeing in our communities, and that is that we are currently experiencing the worst food crisis in a really long time. It's actually worse than COVID currently because it's prolonged. During COVID, we saw a lot of ups and downs. There was, the stimulus payments at certain times. There would be times when those emergency SNAP benefits would kick in, and maybe we would see a decrease in people seeking our services. And then maybe that funding would run out and we would see an uptick again, and it would just kind of ebb and flow for a little while. But what we've seen over the last year or so is sustained. It is a consistent increase in demand that has been a challenge to meet. A lot of our pantries have said they've seen a 50% or more increase in their demand. We have seen in general from the food bank about a 40% average of increase. And the USDA also said in that study they expect grocery prices to rise in the next few months about another 5 or 6%. So we do not expect to see this need decrease anytime soon. The other huge factor in the increasing need we've seen in the last year is that expiration of emergency SNAP benefits. That took effect at the beginning of March. And it was a huge blow to a lot of our neighbors. I went out and spoke to a lot of them, and what I was hearing pretty consistently was a decrease by about 90%. I met a grandma in Normal who her granddaughter lived with her, and they had to keep their gas heat off over the entire winter because they couldn't afford both that and food. And when I asked her what her decrease was in SNAP benefits, she said she went from $220 a month to $20 a month. I've spoken to people in Champaign County, Vermilion County, who echoed about that same story. And these are a lot of people who, of course, maybe are relying on disability or Social Security income. They have very limited options to stretch their budget even more. And they had a huge blow when they lost those emergency SNAP benefits. So between those rising costs and that change in SNAP benefits, we are continuing to try and do our best to meet that elevated need, and that community support is vital for us to continue doing so. I won't be the person that reads everything off the screen. And I know Tracy did link our annual impact report in the chat as well, and that's where these numbers come from. But I did just want to share a snapshot of what we've been seeing in this last year. We did serve over 1.5 million neighbors, and I am excited to say that of the pounds of food we distributed, about a quarter of that was fresh produce, which is great. It's of course always our goal to be as distributing as nutritious food as possible, of course, to our neighbors. And I will say on the subject of the fresh produce, a project that we are working on right now is converting an outbuilding that we have that has been unused for a long time. It is in that space I referenced between our current facility and the frontage road. It's a concrete building that is pretty scary. I've affectionately called it Chernobyl when I've taken pictures of the inside. It's pretty rough. However, it does have great bones, and we absolutely need more cold storage. So that is kind of our next phase right now in all the changes that we've been seeing at our facility in order to be able to continue meeting the need. Is we are working on renovating that building into being less scary and more useful. And it would be part freezer, part refrigerator, and would be huge in what we are able to store and distribute. When we talk to our neighbors, the most common demand, most common wanted item is protein. The prices of protein are very high, and that is an important thing for families to be able to have. And unfortunately, because of our limited cold storage, there are times we've had to decline protein coming to our warehouse because we simply can't store it safely. That's not a place we want to be at. That's not a decision we want to have to make. So we are excited to continue our exciting progress here at the food bank and be able to store more fresh produce and protein for our neighbors. You see at the bottom here, we did have 77 food mobile distributions. That is going to go up a huge amount next year because of our new trailer. So, you know, we're stopping in, I would say 80 to 85 locations each month alone with that trailer. So that is something that's going to change a lot. And then my transportation manager loves for me to add that it was over 176,000 miles accident-free. We're very dedicated to serving families in our community. So you can see here some of the impact we had. Children served by food mobiles and the amount of food provided through school markets and backpack programs to children in our community. And as you see at the bottom here, that volunteer center has just been huge. Our old volunteer space was a very small clean room that could hold 30 to 40 people and was pretty chaotic. It got very echoey, very loud in there. And there would be just like dried macaroni on the floor and just very cramped. And it wasn't great. And it makes all of us on our staff very emotional to see the huge groups of volunteers we have coming in now, because it's such an evolution from where we started. Now we have had on the high end easily like 150 volunteers at once when we've done our Operation Orange volunteer day and had a huge group come in. So we can welcome in so many more people at once. We have energy efficient lighting thanks to Ameren, makes it very bright and welcoming in there. And also our friends at Bayer Crop Sciences donated these anti-fatigue mats that are incredible. They make it a lot easier on your body to stand on those warehouse floors and help us repack food. We have really tried to focus on the volunteer experience and provide more amenities because we can't do what we do without our volunteers. So we're very proud of the space. And again, welcome you to come in, see for yourself, and hang out and repack a little food with us. There are so many ways to get involved. I just mentioned volunteering. Of course, donations do go a long way with us and are very important for us to be able to remain nimble because we don't know what's going to come next. Though we expect the need to stay the same, it could continue to rise. So those financial donations do help a lot. Raising awareness through food drives is another thing. While the food drives don't account for a large part of our inventory, we just really love how engaging they are with the community. Holding a drive with family and friends or at a workplace is a great way to have people learn more about our mission and kind of get their foot in the door of making that impact. And then also, I do have to give a shout out to our prom fundraiser. This is our annual fundraising gala, and it is prom for adults. It's exactly what it sounds like. Right down to people crying in the bathroom because their date danced with someone else. It truly is prom, for better or worse. We love prom. It's so much fun. And this year we're at iHotel for the first time with a honky tonk theme, as you can see. But we welcome people to come support prom, whether that's through a sponsorship. We have a super wide range of ways you can sponsor, through attending, through volunteering with us that night. But prom is a huge part of our community engagement and the funds that we bring in each year. So I just had to give that little plug because it is a great time, but it also has provided millions of meals to the community. So I'm also happy to share more about prom with you. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions on that. And I've got my contact information up here. I'm going to be taking questions in a second, so please feel free, but also you can reach out to me afterward if you think of anything else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sophie. You know, it is disheartening to hear about the prolonged and profound need and the difficult choices that are being made right now. It is heartening, though, to hear about increased volunteerism, also your expanded capacity and some of your plans for the future with the expansion of the Food Mobile program and expanded cold storage. So thanks for being there for 40 years for people in need and for working so well. I'll just speak from Solo's perspective that partnering with Eastern Illinois Food Bank to get fresh vegetables out into the community has been just an outstanding partnership and one we really cherish. So thank you to everyone at the Food Bank and Sophie for sharing so much with us. Do you want to stop sharing your screen? And then folks, if you want to open up your videos and come off of mute, we'll open this up for questions for Sophie.
Hi there, it's Carol. I don't have a question, but I do want to share a little bit. I did a ride along with the food truck, and I was so impressed. The people from the food bank knew most of the people who were there. They treated them like they were long lost friends, and there was no stigma at all. And it was really a great experience.
Well, Carol, I really appreciate you coming out and doing that, and I appreciate you saying that because I do want to give a shout out to our Food Mobile crew. Um, it is currently, so like I said, we're on the road nearly every day each month, almost every weekday and a couple weekends as well. And with very few exceptions, it is the same driver doing it every single time. Those are long days. It's a lot of driving. And it is almost always the same two young women on our staff that will go with him. There's a bigger team that absolutely makes it happen. And so many people deserve a lot of credit for making this work. But those three core Food Mobile staff that are out there, their names are Carl, Coretta, and Skylar. They are fantastic. And like you said, every time I've been out there with them, the people that we serve are really just excited to see them. And that's huge for us because we want it to feel like a dignified experience. We want it to feel like you're stopping at your small town grocery store where people do know your name. And I think that our team has been really good about that. We work very hard to not have there be a stigma. We remember things about people's lives so we can check in with them. I was bawling in Douglas County recently because there was someone who her husband had been going through a lot of health issues. They were in a pretty dark place, to be frank. And she just started crying because she said that looking forward to seeing us was kind of getting her through, and she'd come out on the other side and was feeling more healthy. And she had bought everyone gloves because it was cold outside, and
Oh.
she refused to take food. So we of course had to sneak it in her car when she wasn't looking, but she didn't want any food. She just really wanted to give us those gifts. And it's just, I mean, people thank me for doing what I do, and I don't deserve it. I'm so grateful. I can't believe how lucky I am to be out there and getting to know these people in the communities we serve. It's a gift to be able to do this. And I'm so proud of my teammates.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you have achieved what you are trying to. It was quite a day. It was great.
Yeah, and I will say, a challenge we've had, one of the challenges with the Food Mobile, because of course it is a work in progress. It's a program that we're still learning how we can be better, make more of an impact, just kind of tweak things as we go. There is the challenge of the times of distribution, because in some places it's better to go on a weekday. In some places they do work during the day. They still need the food assistance, but they're not available during the day. So that is a challenge that we continue to face and assess, is trying to reach people as best we can, because we never want to show up to a stop and have there be nobody. So if we show up and there aren't that many people, we kind of have to ask, do we need to go to the next town? Would that be more impactful? Or is it a matter of this not being a good time of day? So we're all very proud of what we've achieved so far with the Food Mobile, but I know that it's still a work in progress to be able to serve people as best we can.
Great, thank you, Sophie. Any other questions? Otherwise, there's one in the chat that I can raise. Okay, so Rick asks, he says he's curious to know how agencies deal with challenges like cold storage as means to support distribution of fresh veggies, proteins, etc.
That is a challenge that some of our partner agencies face. We do occasionally have building capacity grants where we do work with our agencies if there is something that they are needing. That could be technology, that could be refrigeration, something like that. So we do try to support them in any way that we can. Also, there are some agencies who just plain don't have the ability. And so we've tried to supplement that in different ways, whether that is through the Food Mobile. We have also had in the past what we call produce pop-ups, where we would just come alongside their operating hours and supplement what they're giving out with refrigerated items like dairy and produce. So it's definitely something that we want to support them any way we can. Every pantry is different. So there's no one size fits all solution, but we definitely work with them to help them in any way we can, because they do have those cold storage limitations.
I had a question. I was curious in stating the desire of alleviating hunger, as far as how the food bank defines hunger and how exactly, I guess, you guys measure that.
That's a great question. And I went ahead and started my video again, but I'm in a conference room. The reason I didn't have it on is because I'm so far away, but I forgot I didn't have that on. So for us, hunger really is, as I mentioned earlier, just that food insecurity of not knowing where you get your next meal. When people do seek our services, we do ask them to self-attest to meeting the state required income guidelines, but that's really about all that will quote unquote make them answer. There are other questions that we ask just for demographic data that helps with grant funding, that helps with just data tracking, but no one is compelled to answer anything they don't want to answer. If they're meeting those income guidelines, we are considering them someone who needs food assistance, and we are providing that assistance to them.
Yeah, the
I'm
reason I'm
sorry.
asking, I was just curious because I know the USDA obviously uses the terminology of food insecurity and kind of stays away from the hunger terminology because of just from a data collection and measurement point of view that hunger is just defined as a physiological condition that's really difficult to measure. And they don't really, and so that's why I asked that, as I was just curious as far as the use of that terminology versus the food insecurity language.
Right. Yeah, we do use them personally on an organizational level. We do use them interchangeably, and we will say interchangeably, someone facing hunger, someone facing food insecurity. We do try, of course, to use the strengths-based language and not say hungry people or someone in need. And we always refer to them as our neighbors and never our clients. So our focus has been more around that inclusive and strengths-based language, and we do use hunger and food insecurity interchangeably.
Sophie, I noticed on the Food Finder that other languages are possible. And I wonder if you, it's a two-part question, I wonder if you could answer what other languages you're seeing, if it's possible to see what languages are being used. And then also if you could speak to a little bit to serving immigrants in our community and what that looks like.
Absolutely. We have had a few instances where specific organizations will reach out to do kind of immigrant-centric distributions, maybe an area where there is a higher concentration of immigrants, ways that we can support them directly. So we do partner with those opportunities when possible, and we do want to be very inclusive with our language. So across our website, the Food Finder, as well as the entire website, there is a Google Translate option. So I believe the languages we have would be, besides English, would be Spanish, French, I want to say Chinese, and there might be one more. Can't remember off the top of my head, but we tried to base that off of information we've gathered at distributions of primary languages and just the demographics we serve. We do have the ability to add another language if that's ever something that comes up, and that would be helpful. We're happy to do that. And we do have of our physical flyers, those I do translate those into multiple languages. That Duolingo is paying for itself. But we definitely try and have those available in multiple languages whenever possible. And it does seem that it's typically, and of course, this is a generalization and not true of everything, but it typically is Champaign County and McLean County that have that bigger demand for multiple languages because they are college towns. So those are the areas that we do see a little bit more of diversity in language. But we do try and be aware of that in any resource that we're creating.
Great. Are there other questions? Or comments, thoughts? I was impressed by the over 500% increase in volunteerism, and just knowing, it sounds like you've got open hours Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 9 to 3, and there's a lot of kids that are about to be released from school for about 3 weeks, also college students, et cetera. I wonder if there's an age limit and are children welcome in repacking and other volunteer events?
They are welcome at some. I recommend going to our website and under, which tab is it? I should know because I run the website. It is Take Action. That's what I was looking for. And Donate Time. There's our volunteer page, and it has the age restrictions that will vary. We like to do family repacks when we can. And then we do say that it's typically 8 or older for most of our repacks. 13 or older can be here without an adult, but between 8 and 13 need to have an adult with them. There are some opportunities though where under 8 are welcome, of course, with an adult. But yeah, with those open hours, it's great because people really can just drop in. And we do ask if it's a large group, like if you've got a school bus full of kids, maybe just give us a heads up. You're still welcome, but just so that we're prepared to welcome a group in. But that flexibility has been huge because people have very busy lives. They've got a lot going on, and we just didn't want to be so strict that it's like, all right, you have to register from 10 to 12 and you will stay here that whole time. It's like, just stop on by. And, we had someone who was doing a closing on their house and the paperwork was taking too long. So they came here for 30 minutes. And that's great. That's what we want to be, is we want to come to mind when you're thinking like, I've got some extra time. What could I do that might be fun? Get out of the house. Just stop on by and pack some food because it's a lot of fun here. We'll play music, we'll have a good time with you, and you're putting food into the hands of the community. So
That's great. We have another question in the chat. What, if anything, has been done to address the growing need among people with food allergies? And then also I'd add to that also dietary restrictions, other health-related dietary restrictions.
that is something that we ask of all of our neighbors at the time of food distribution when we do that intake. Again, it's something that no one is compelled to answer, but we do like to get that data so that we are seeing, X amount of people have this food allergy. We're serving this many people who identify as disabled or a veteran. There's a wide gamut that the data runs. Food allergies are something that we do ask about, and we unfortunately don't have a policy, I guess, right now to address that. That is something we've talked about recently. We are getting that data. We are trying to provide as diverse a group of food as possible and not just give everyone boxes of mac and cheese. That's always our goal. We try to provide locally grown food when we can. We try and provide a wide range of food, culturally relevant food. That's another data point that we do collect. We've done surveys about different cultural foods that we can get for people, and that has made a huge difference. So we do get that data to try and keep in mind and try and be able to pass out a wider range of food that can help with that. But I will be transparent and say, unfortunately, we don't have, for example, we don't have like, and here's our gluten-free box option. We don't have a standard for that. We're getting that data. We're trying to keep it in mind in the food that we order, but there's so many factors that go into what we're able to distribute that we don't have a strategy in place for that.
There's one more question in the chat, but I'll leave a little bit of space if someone wants to speak up and voice a question now.
I have a question really quick, Sophie. With the estimated rise of food costs, I suspect that individuals that or families that weren't necessarily food insecure before could be becoming food insecure. Is there anything that we can do as like community partners or that the food bank could do to help get ahead of that? Like maybe like meal planning or different ways to shop in the grocery store or different. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I think that advice on basically stretching a dollar at the grocery store is huge, because I do think you're absolutely correct. There are people who are about to find themselves in a different situation than they're used to being in. And I have so I have this memory so clearly of this is probably like 2008, 2009, where I was in college and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna eat healthy. And I went to Schnucks and I got this grocery cart to the brim with healthy food, which we all know is more expensive. And I will never forget spending $120 and being shocked and being like, that's so much money. And it was, I mean, the cart's overflowing with food and it was $120. And that always just sticks out in my head now because when I go to the grocery store and I hear my total, it's like record scratch moment. Like, what? And I think that there's a lot of room for education around that. There's a lot of room for teaching people ways to maybe buy a little bit more in bulk and, like you said, meal plan and make one meal stretch out into 2 meals and things like that, because I think people are going to be a little bit out of their element coming up, and that kind of assistance is huge. And I also think it helps if everyone just shares our food mobile and food finder information with everyone, because it sounds crazy, but we need people to come out and take this food from us. um, there are times where we're packing up that truck and we're going out there and we're not always emptying the truck. We need more people to come out. Whenever people come to those food mobiles, I tell them, thank you so much for coming, because we can't do this if you don't show up to take the food. So I do think that that proactive education around shopping and meal planning is very, very helpful. But I really encourage everyone to share information about the assistance we provide, because we want people to be taking advantage of the assistance. And advantage is not the right word in context, but you know what I mean. We want people to be using this assistance, and we want to be, I guess another thing that comes to mind is kind of proactively breaking down that stigma. Because again, to be transparent, when I was younger, I got laid off from a job that, I mean, it just kind of knocked me on my behind getting that layoff, because I was in a position where I was not knowing how I was going to pay my bills, and my life changed overnight. And it's really important for people to know that that's not uncommon. Most people really are a really bad stroke of luck away from being on the other side of this situation. And it's important to remember that we're all the same and no one's any better than anyone else. And there's no shame in accepting that help. And that's something that's not easy for a lot of people to believe, but we're trying really hard to assure them right now that hunger is a community issue and they are not alone in needing this assistance. And we want this to feel like just picking up groceries. Getting food from us should feel the same as going to Schnucks or wherever. Just, you need some food, come get it from us. We want that dignity of the experience.
All right. With that, I think we're going to close our time together. Thank you so much, Sophie, for your excellent work, for expanding on our understanding of the important work that the food bank's doing. And please send a huge hearty gratitude to all of the staff that you work with at the food bank. Just a reminder to please put your contact information in the chat if you'd like to be kept abreast of future events. Our next Day of the Place speakers will be on January 25th, and we'll include healthcare providers from OSF to talk about the health impacts of food insecurity, and then also a researcher from Washington University who is tracking the connection between hunger and child abuse. And then also please stay tuned for invitations to go out for a January happy hour. That'll help keep us connected and talking. And thank you to everyone, especially Sophie, and here's to a great rest of the day. Cheers.
Thank you.
Just real quick, this is Janine.
Sure.
I was just wondering, is that prom fundraiser open to register? Is that open to anyone?
Tickets and tables will go on sale in January. Right now, we are just getting the word out and talking about sponsorship opportunities. So sponsorships are available. They start at $500 and range up to $10,000. So there's a big range there of ways to support. So I'm happy to give more information on that. But then if you are interested in attending, that'll be coming up after the holidays, that information.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good to see you. Thanks for putting this on. I appreciate it.
So long, Janine. All right. Good deal. I think we got some extra contact information in the chat. Sophie, since I started the recording late, which I should feel better by now, but are you comfortable with me putting your bio on the website to accompany the video, since that's not going to be included in the actual video?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, great. All right. Well, do you need anything else from me?
no, if no one else has any questions, I'll go ahead and jump off.
Okay, thanks so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day ahead of you, and I'll get to the video for you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sophie. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.